Welcome to everybody. My name's Paul Rook. I'm the Executive Director of BCA, and welcome to our next webinar, which is on the subject of digital technologies. And in particular, welcome to our two speakers, Vincent Minner of Covantis and Diana Khalifa of Pharma Connect. So we know digital technologies are the new kid on the block to some extent, but they're often more talked about than seen in practice. But we have two speakers today who have been working to put the theory into practice, and we've deliberately chosen to hear from both within and outside the coffee sector. So Covantis has been created by trading companies to deliver supply chain benefits and efficiencies, very much emanating out of a pre-competitive approach. Pharma Connect is operational and comes with more of a focus on the two endpoints of the chain, so the farmer and the consumer. But both are really creating new opportunities in supply chain management and improving chain transparency. Now, clearly, none of this comes without its challenges, and some of these challenges are very much in the thoughts, I guess, of businesses and BCA members still looking to consider how digital technologies will shape the future. So the aim of today has been to both understand how these operations, the two that the speakers will be talking about, have come into practice, how they've addressed some of these challenges, and hopefully look to answer some of your questions about how these new technologies work and their introduction into a supply chain. So the presentations will follow on from each other, and we will then have time for questions at the end. So if you would please submit your questions via the question box, which you'll see on your screen. And we'll monitor those as the two speakers speak, and we'll hopefully have about 10 or 15 minutes at the end for speaking. So I think with that, can I please hand over and introduce our first speaker, Vincent Minner of Covantis. Vincent, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you to the British Coffee Association for this opportunity granted to Covantis to present you today our journey, which started a few years ago already, and now is getting close to reality as we plan to go live with our first version early 2021. So thank you again, and let me go through now the presentation. And so the platform in the industry we operate, or the one where we apply our platform, is the agri-bulk industry, and for the part of the supply chain which goes from FOB to cost and freight. So probably unlike Pharma Connect, we don't cover the farm to port, nor from port to the final consumer inland. Probably it's maybe something that we can also apply to coffee trade at one point. Next. So the agri-bulk, which is a very inefficient, as you will see, industry in terms of how they process their transactions. They do include a lot of intermediaries or actors. It goes from growers to traders, within traders as well, and then to the charterer who will be loading cargo at the port of origin, and then transporting the cargo to the end buyer at the port of destination, being mills, refineries, or end consumer, or even manufacturers. So the platform of Covantis is covering all these actors. Of course, it includes as well the surveyors at one point, the port agents, and any kind of fumigation company, and so on and so forth. Next one. Okay, so as Paul introduced you, this project was initiated by the 6 major companies in the agri world: ADM, Bunge, Cargill, Glencore, LDC or Dreyfus, and COFCO. Some of you do know already that Glencore Agriculture will be or has changed its name into Viterra. If you look at the next slide, even though that we are a consortium which has created this company and this project, but definitely we are not looking at only serving the interest of these 6, of course not. We are looking at involving the whole industry, including other majors and all the industry that will compose the agri industry in its large extent definition. So it's not only for the 6, it's really for the overall industry. If we go next. So the purpose of Covantis is really to bring to the industry a trusted independent legal entity. It is an entity which is still owned by the 6, but the way we are operating, the way we are bringing and delivering our platform is looking at how and what the industry needs and bring these customer satisfaction to reality. So it's not something that we are going to build on our own and then delivering at one point to the industry. It's something that we have started to develop with the user, with the industry since day one, developing this platform, developing the user experience that will be translated into the platform. Next one. So, and why we are doing that? That's maybe some of the question that Paul and all of you are asking, why we are doing this. First of all, it's maybe the conjunction of 2 factors. One is that since few years, the margin in our businesses are shrinking drastically. So it's not like in the 80s or the 90s where our world was providing a higher margin. Now, and digitalization is probably one of the results of that. Information, knowing what's going on, it's something which is accessible to the vast majority of the players. So it's no longer what it was maybe in the early 90s, 60s, 70s, 80s, where the major had the opportunity to have only the information what's going on in terms of markets and supply and demand. Now this information is widely available. So that has an impact also on the margin. Then the way that the industry was approaching this was, okay, let's see how we can reduce cost. And reducing cost, the first reaction was, let's move the workforce from highly cost jurisdiction to lower cost jurisdiction. But still the processes were the same, and the risk and the inefficiency was there. Next slide. So we had to answer these lack of efficiency because they were still bringing a high number of errors. The cost of capital which was allocated to manage our industry was still not efficiently used. And last but not least, all the fraud, all the difficulty of also reconciling information between the counterparties was not efficient. So even though that you might have reduced some of the operational cost by potentially creating shared service center, the processes were not efficient. And as an example, we were looking at guessing how many emails we were exchanging in this industry, and we came to a number of 275 million emails per year. So just to give you an example, it's 3 times the Mount Everest. So as you see, the challenges were really to change the processes and not to move into a shared service center and then still keep those changes, these processes intact. If we go to the next slide, so the 275 million, if you then go back to a user, it means that a user might receive between 600 and 800 emails per day. So just imagine the number of emails that you need to receive in your inbox. You need to file them, you need to delete them, you need to do maybe to a very small fraction of those emails, you'll see that you need to do an action. So when you find them, you need to find them. So at the end of the day, most of your time is not efficiently used in terms of how to manage your time. Next. So that brings back to how we're going to address it. So what we were doing was really to look at how to replicate the user experience, and bring the user interface so that what the user will be using tomorrow is a platform which really answers his pain points, and also is in line with what he has to do day in and day out. And so that was an important, let's say, process that we started to implement right from the beginning. So the user was really the center of our focus and the starting point of how to design the platform. So it was workshops that we did for the last 2 years. It was a different world, so we were in person doing workshops in mainly Brazil, Europe, and US, where we really listen to the user and interpret into the platform design how they work day in and day out. Cognizant, which is one of our IT partner, brought this deep experience in design, in designing a platform and replicating the user experience. Next one. Yeah, because at the end of the day, just to remind all of us that even though that today we have a virtual conference, at the end of the day, there are still people and human being doing the job to manage our industry. Robots might come at one point, but still today we have human being working at getting food from one part of the world to another. Next one. So what have we done? So as I tried to share briefly before, what we're looking is what the user was doing on a daily basis, trying to see how complex was the industry, how complex were the processes. So to take an example is, what is the voyage, let's say, experience or journey, and then try to deep dive in terms of understanding each and every single step to translate that into maybe a more simple and efficient way to look at it. So one example was looking at the documentary instructions that we need to send to our seller so that it provides the right documents when loading the cargo, and translating that into our platform in a way which is efficient and flowing, let's say, naturally, in terms of how the platform will provide this information. If we go to the next one, what was important is also to see what are the value proposition that the platform has to bring in terms of making the platform adopted by the market. So what we need to do is to make sure that whatever we bring is not only another piece of technology that will replace what you're doing. It has to bring a value. So the main value drivers of Covantis could be seen as, of course, increasing the efficiency, decreasing the risk, decreasing the use of working capital, and last but not least, keeping in-house expertise by having the employee happy to use the platform and being at ease to use the platform. So it is really to look at how we could reduce the number of hours that one would spend on managing its voyage or its vessel execution, by the number of emails, by the number of processing time in terms of using these emails and filing them. The risk, we have seen in the past and still today that there is a lot of risk in terms of failing to send a notice to your seller in time, to advise him about the vessel arrival, and so on and so forth. So those are risks which at the end of the day are costly. And whatever you can do in terms of bringing these processes in a location where potentially the manpower is less expensive, at the end of the day, these risks are so huge that you can do whatever you want. At the end of the day, it hits your balance sheet and your P&L. So you need to really focus on changing, improving the processes so that those risks are diminished, if not disappeared at one point. And for Brazil, Then for Brazil, we looked at providing a very specific functionality, which was around what we call the string visibility, which is the supply chain between the FOB and the shipper and the last FOB seller in Brazil. It's a very particular, let's say, functionality that we had to develop for Brazil. Next one. So how we have been able to identify what we call the minimum viable product that will be released early next year, and what we can bring as the maximum value, or this value proposition, which will convince the user that that's the way to go, that's what he needs to do or she needs to do to make sure that the amount of time, and at the end of the day, the company paying also to use the platform is getting a bigger value in terms of return. So we looked at developing a communication and notification environment or functionality where all the counterparties could communicate between each other. That is a very efficient piece of functionality where you don't need anymore to file your emails. They are filed on a contextual way in terms of the voyage that you're using. Each emails or communication, is filed automatically. It is also the nomination and substitution. So the companies will be using the platform to send official notices, and this string visibility that is very important for Brazil, which provides automatically how the supply chain for that part of the execution is taking place. In other words, from the shipper up to the charterer, we can see how the parties do buy and sell to each other. That's the first release that we're going to do next year. And why we have done that? It's because today that's the most manual. That's the most manually done processes in this industry. There is really no available software or solution that can really bring this piece of functionality. So for us, it was a natural choice to go into these fields. Later on, we're going to look at bringing the appointment of third-party providers, as I said, surveyors, port agent, and fumigation company. It could be also Chamber of Commerce, customs, and so on. Developing the documentary instructions and the documents process, being drafting documents and then bringing them up to the original. That's the next release that we're going to work later in 2021. In terms of the value that we want to bring to the industry, of course, then we're going to look at other areas such as trade confirmation or lay time or electronic documents later on, but those are always back to, is there a value for the user? If we go to the next one. So the lesson we learned working with Cognizant and the other IT partner is Consensus. Probably some of you do know Consensus. Consensus is one of the leader, if not the leader, in the blockchain technology. One of the founder of Consensus was the founder of Ethereum. At Covantis, we are using the enterprise version of Ethereum, which is called Quorum. And that's the piece of technology that we are using for the blockchain part. Blockchain in our platform is approximately 25 to 30% of the technology that we are using. The rest is probably what we call or we refer to as, let's say, a traditional type of technology. Why only 25 or 30% of technology is using a blockchain? Because blockchain is still a technology which is yet to mature. So it's still evolving day after day. And in terms of also the efficiency in processing, it's probably not the best efficient technology. However, it brings, and that was one of the main trigger of also this journey that we started at Covantis. The blockchain, and especially Quorum, is bringing the safety, the security around data, which was one of the key concerns at Covantis, to answer also the expectation from the user, from the future user of the platform. All of them, their first key question was, but are we sure the data is secured? Are we sure my data will not be mixed with other companies' data? And that is what blockchain is bringing through the algorithm that we apply on the data, and that creates this famous hash key that all of us might know, or at least have heard when we are looking at blockchain. That is only what the Covantis platform will keep. All the data is not on the platform of Covantis, it's on the decentralized ledger technology that we do use in our platform, and each different company might select to have either its own database linked into this network, or it might share their database with other companies, and we refer that to multi-tenant nodes or single-tenant nodes. So that's the let's say two piece of information I want to share about the technology as well. So coming back to what we learned, yes, the platform adoption is key. We need to make sure that the platform is adopted. The business model we apply at Covantis is a utility model. It means that it's not for profit that we are developing this platform. Obviously, we are looking to create enough revenue to pay for the cost and bring some positive cash flow for future development. But the key objective is not to create profit. So it's not. So you will not see Covantis having returns of the fintech, or let's say ratio or multiples that you see in this area. That's not what Covantis is looking for. Is looking at transforming the industry with the industry. So last but not least, as I said, we are looking at Brazil next year as our first origin to launch the platform to all key destinations for corn and beans. Then we might look at US being the next country of origin that will be deploying our platform. We are currently evaluating the pros and cons and the requirement of such a market. I guess I'm just in time. So thank you very much for listening to me. Hopefully it was not too fast, because I tried to give you as much as I could in 30 minutes, and I didn't want to go over the time allocated to Diana, to whom I hand over now the opportunity to present her project and company.
Thank you so much, Vincent, and thank you, Paul, and the British Coffee Association for the opportunity to present Farmer Connect here. I think it's right on point, since the theme is technology and how can we use that to connect the supply chain. That's exactly what we're doing at Farmer Connect. We're creating an end-to-end traceability platform, going all the way from the coffee grower to the consumer in the other end. So I can take the first slide, please. So again, relating back to Vincent's great presentation around the importance of working with the industry and also why we're using blockchain, which we also do. So there are two similarities there, is that we are not just coming from the side providing technology just for the technology's sake. We actually come from the industry, and when I say the industry, I really mean the coffee industry. So again, all the way from the growers and the origin countries to the exporters, the importers, the roasters, and the consumers in the other end. And it came out of an industry need where there is more need for traceability and transparency, and where there is an initiative that can really work for the entire industry, not just for one supply chain or not just one company. So we're really an open initiative, and we're working with as a software as a service solution. So basically you're subscribing or you're using us as a technology provider, and that's, I think, is our key to scaling what we do. Next slide, please. Again, I wanted to show here the connection and the advisory board that we have with the industry. So this is just an overview. I'm not going to present all those talented and experienced people in detail, but the advisory board, together with our founders, together with the partners, together with our client, really presents a core coming out of coffee and the opportunities and the challenges that we have in our industry. Next slide, please. So what is it actually that we're doing? I was talking about end-to-end traceability and transparency, but to do that, we have to use a few different technologies. So we're developing a platform that connects all ends of the supply chain and also making data more accessible to all those actors on the supply chain. And the vision going forward is that this would enable more efficiencies and more transparency into the supply chain. So also resonating with what Vincent was saying, that there are many inefficiencies in our supply chains. And even in the case with coffee, where we're talking about smallholder farmers and a lot of different silos of information, transactions and businesses taking place, we even have even more potential to do more about this using emerging technologies. Next slide, please. And we do this because of multiple different reasons. I've just listed a few of the most important ones, but I think the main theme is that there is a need or an urge coming from consumers, governments and companies alike to know where are products coming from, how were they produced, and can I also trust this information? So we're not just talking about tracing goods and connecting digital information to the physical good, but also what value does this data bring, and how can we trust that this information is what it is intended to be? So we're taking the idea of digitalization and data one step further by also thinking about how can we validate this so that the data is also more trustworthy. So the first one is the sustainability and knowing the origin of the products. The second thing is really the trust, both in the data, the trust in the companies, and also for the consumers to know a little bit more about the products that they're buying. I think also that there is a trend in the market to also better recognize the great work being done by the farmers and in the beginning of the supply chains, not only because of altruistic reasons, because it's ethical, but also from future-proofing the supply chain, because if the coffee producing is not going to be profitable, it's not going to be possible because of climate change and other kind of changing conditions, how can we ensure the supply of this great product? So to summarize in 3 words, what we're providing to the coffee supply chain by using our technologies is trust, profit, and control. So trust in the way that there is backing up of data from the claims being made. So if something is supposed to come from one origin and having specific characteristics connected to it, we have a way to use our platform to connect data to that and to really build that kind of layer of trust by not just making claims, but proving them. The second one is profit, so relating back again to the Covantis presentation around eliminating a few of those efficiencies so that we would lower the cost of the operation, at the same time tapping into the growing market of sustainable products that we see now is one of the fastest growing markets in the consumer facing piece, where we see that proving this and providing more information where products coming from is really an opportunity to tap into that growing segment. The third piece is control, which means that we aggregate data from all the different silos in the supply chain so that the organization logging in and seeing this information is in more control, since they have more visibility into the supply chains that they're dealing with. So next slide, please. Okay, so now we really get into the details. How do we do this? As you might imagine, this is quite a big task when we talk smallholder farmers all the way to the consumer. So we have to use more than one technology and more than one product. So we basically have 3 integrated products that we are providing in Farmer Connect. So in the top, you see an overview of the different actors in the supply chain, and in the bottom, how those different products connect into the supply chain. So in the very beginning, we have what we call the Farmer ID, which allows any farmer with a cell phone, regardless if it's a smartphone or just a flip phone with SMS functionality, to connect to the digital supply chain. In the middle, we have the Farmer Connect platform, which basically allows data to be uploaded from all these different participants and linked on our system. In the other end, we have the Thank My Farmer consumer app, in which a consumer can scan a QR code on a package and see all this journey from this specific product, and also has a way to engage in sustainability projects being implemented in the origin as well. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start by presenting all of these 3 products in as much detail as I can in the time that has been granted to me. But basically what Farmer ID is, it is a way to relate back to the fact of having more trusted information. Because as we know, in the supply chains, it's usually very difficult in the very beginning to get information, and especially information that has been validated or some kind of a proof connected to it. So the idea of Farmer ID came to place so that we can use the fact that many coffee growers has access to a cell phone. And this cell phone, we can use the phone number and the name of the farmer to register them with this Farmer ID, which on the back end technically is a self-sovereign identity, but that's a completely different story. But what it does is that it allows us to connect the farmer to the supply chain and also to make transactions and digital receipts. So in the simplest form, if a coffee grower delivers 60 kilograms of coffee, receives a payment for that, and no matter what format it is, if it's cash, if it's check, if it's a bank account transfer, we can send a confirmation that can be validated by the farmer so that we have a digital receipt, 1 copy for the farmer, 1 copy for the buyer, and the buyer's copy can be connected to our system and travel up the entirety of the supply chain to the end buyer as well. For the farmer, this means that there is a proof of income, which is usually one of the main problems in accessing finances or additional services, is being able to prove that you've had an income this year or the year before, or even 5 years back. So we're solving for a few different problems here, but the most interesting piece is the ability to be able to connect what is happening on the ground using digital technologies to the physical goods being shipped to another destination. Next slide, please. Then we get to the second product, which is really the core in what we do and really the backbone connecting the different organizations. And this is also based on blockchain technology, since we also see the value of securely stored data, but it's also a way to securely share data between the partners that are doing business with each other. So you would want to make sure that your business partner has access to the data that you've agreed upon, but not your competitor, of course. And this is why we built this on the IBM Food Trust blockchain. And that is basically an initiative that is now used by more than 200 food companies to be able to aggregate supplier information and be able to go into one place, search for a specific lot, a specific shipment, and find the entirety of that trace, even though it comes from multiple suppliers and has passed multiple different hands. And we're using the same technology, but we see that in the coffee supply chain, the challenges and the opportunities are a little bit different, because when the food trust was developed, they wanted to do faster food recall. So if there was an issue with, let's say, a salad or oranges or anything else on a market somewhere, you could go in, trace for that specific shipment, and you would find the trace and you would know what food that you could recall quickly. We use the same system, but we do that to have the provenance and the origin information of the coffee being stored and shared in a quick way. So if there are questions around where is this coffee coming from, how was it produced, etc., you could find it in one and the same place. So in the basic form, it allows the data from the exporter to be connected to the importer, to be connected to the end roaster in the other end, in one in the same environment, independent of the internal system. So we're only interested in the information that has to travel between the organizations and be shared, while other information can be kept in existing internal systems and for the purposes that are being used today. Next slide, please. And this all ties into the idea of, if we do all the great work with actually figuring out and making sure that the products that we are promoting or putting on the market, that we know where they're coming from, we know more information about them, even though it comes from first, second, or third tier suppliers, what can we do with this information? So we saw here there was a great opportunity to prove to consumers that we know where this product is coming from, and we can also show you the great journey of coffee. For example, my background is in engineering and sustainability, so I got the great fortune to be introduced to the coffee world a year and a half ago. I didn't even know how coffee was produced. It's embarrassing, but I think a lot of consumers can relate to that. But here we have a way to actually show how diverse the coffee supply chain is and what a great journey it has done, and also the great work behind that cup of coffee, because when you get into the business, they understand that it's really a great story to tell to the consumer in more detail, and also to show the varieties of coffees. And we do that through the Thank My Farmer app, in which a consumer can scan a QR code. They land on a page which allows for the brand to put more information around the coffee, tell the story around the origin and how it was produced or how it should be best prepared. It's really up to the brand what should be put in there. At the same time, we have an integration with the platform, so we can push for this specific SKU and for each specific lot the detailed traceability information, but in the form of a map. So instead of having all the details that we have in the platform in terms of the container numbers and dates and the quantities and you name it, we can here just show a map over the different facilities that has been involved in delivering these coffees. So we can go as far back as the trace allows. Sometimes we're at farmer group level and sometimes we're at the first processing level, but we can still show a little bit more information around that coffee. We also have this idea that there is a lot of great efforts being done by different companies and different organizations in the coffee supply chain, but this is not always communicated to the consumer, and we also do not always know what kind of topics that resonates best with the consumer. So in the app, we also have a section in which the consumer can look at different sustainability projects and also support or get engaged if they would want to, and also learn more about why those initiatives are needed in the supply chain. And I took the opportunity to show here the latest product that we launched, I think, a week and a half ago to the UK market. So I thought it was suitable with the British Coffee Association, which is an orangutan coffee that is now completely traceable and can be bought in Waitrose and Ocado. And we could also scan the QR code here on the presentation. So By scanning a QR code, just open the camera functionality if you have an iPhone, and you can just put it in front of the presentation, and you're going to get a link that you can click, and you can see the entirety of the app. If you have an Android phone, you might need a QR code reader to be able to read this QR code. But we're really happy to be able to launch this product, because here we both have the farmer groups in the trays, we have the exporter, we have the importer, we have the roaster, the packaging, everything is connected, and all of these different organizations has provided their piece of the trays and the information. And we also have different projects, both premiums to the coffee growers. We have supporting the charming orangutan projects as well, and trainings also for the farmers, which is directly related to this coffee. I can take the next slide, please. So thank you very much for joining. I think I have another slide with my contact information and email. So if you have any questions, thoughts, feedbacks, interest, let me know, and happy to be connected. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana, and thank you to Vincent as well. And I think, you know, you've both provided quite a broad spread of information, but it's actually quite interesting as to how, which I think is what we're hoping for, how many things you sort of, you know, tied together between two systems that are operating in sort of different commodity areas. And thanks also for sticking absolutely to time. That's great. So it does give us a few minutes to look at some questions. I'm going to try and, there's two here I think I'm going to try and merge, because I think they both come back to the issue of blockchain. I mean, one is asking about digitalization and the prevention of data breaches and protecting privacy. And I guess the question there, from what you've both said, is the answer as simple as blockchain will sort of deliver that and will allow confidence to ensure that those things are happening. And just going on from that, I suspect the other aspect of blockchain is the real value of blockchain to a business. Is it simply coming from this, or does it actually require more of a mindset change within the business, maybe even within the supply chain, to ensure that businesses and chains are going to get the full value out of blockchain, whether that's today or, I think as Vincent was saying, it's, you know, blockchain is developing sort of day on day. So how would you sort of respond to sort of both of those? I don't know, Diana, do you want to pick that up first?
Yeah, sure. It's a very interesting question. There are also very different answers to that. I'm going to try to be as precise and pedagogic as I can. When first, in terms of ensuring the data that gets on the blockchain, and will this, you know, safeguard the information that goes onto the blockchain, and can we actually trust the data more? I think the common problem with blockchain is whatever you put in is going out. There is a, you know, not so appropriate expression for that, but, you know, what goes in goes out. So we would want to make sure what gets uploaded is actually what we want to have there. And there, I think blockchain cannot solve for the issue that somebody would upload fraudulent data or falsified information and it would be permanently stored. We can't avoid that. But what we do have is, again, a permanent record of that. So how we see that Farmer Connect is that this would incentivize good behavior and would incentivize having the correct data being uploaded, because or else there's a permanent record that you can't really change and tamper with, because also it's shared with your partner, so you would see the same version of that information. So it's not in your internal system where you could change it. So the mechanism, we think, will encourage better data and more trustworthy information. To the second question around if there is a mindset change needed to be able to use blockchain, I don't think so. I mean, I usually go to clients sometimes and I don't even talk about blockchain. It's a database, it's a way to store information. You shouldn't have to think about it. We as a tech company should think about it. I think the main change in perception that we are working with is the fact that since it's a safe storage, since it's a safe sharing, you can be on the same system as competitors. And that is a really sensitive question and requires some kind of, that takes a bit of time to get used to, but we're already seeing the adoption and the acceptance of that. Okay, going forward, since businesses exist in network, it might also be that the data also exists in networks going forward and not in those protected silos.
Thanks, Vincent. Any sort of thoughts on that blockchain question?
Well, I think that Diana gave a very good explanation, or yeah, probably a good definition about blockchain. Yeah, it is, maybe just to add a few words, is the what we usually refer to as the single source of truth. It means that whether the source of truth is, as Diana said, wrong or right, but it is the single source of reference, which means that the change, probably where I might be a little bit different from Diana, is there is a slight mindset change that you need to have, is that you need to accept that you are part of an ecosystem. In other words, before, most of the companies were working in isolation with their system. It's only towards their customer and themselves, while blockchain is bringing a larger let's say scope of allowing multiple companies or platforms to be part of a more global ecosystem. And that is probably what the blockchain is bringing, this ability to create these larger ecosystem where all of the actors could work together, because technology is bringing the safety, the security in terms of the data, and also keeping the single source of truth, saying that these data cannot be modified. It can be changed by having another data, but the original data stays as it is.
And I think here, just to add a small note, because the blockchain question always comes up, and I think we've reached a point where 3 years ago, when I did research on blockchain and potential applications, there was this hope that blockchain would solve everything for everybody. That has gone away, because both in Covantis and Pharma Connect, you can see we use it together with other technologies. We see it has value. It brings one important piece to the puzzle, but you also have to work with other technologies. And I think that development is really interesting in seeing, because that has been happening in the latest 2 or 3 years. And going forward, I think that part will still remain, brings value there. We're just going to see in what other technologies it's being used with.
Can I stay with you, Diana, because there are a couple of quick questions which are probably quite detailed. One is, apart from provenance, do you trace any other information such as sustainability, prices, carbon, etc.? And then just to add on to that, a second question, is there a minimum green coffee volume that buyers would need in order to get involved with Pharma Connect?
So I will start with the second question, actually, the minimum volume. I would say right now, no. It also depends on the different operations, the pricing situation, the supply chain, but I wouldn't want to say there's a minimum volume. It might be that there are operational things or the time in the team being spent, but that's something we would always look at. And I wouldn't want to say it's a minimum volume for now, because we're also targeting we've mostly been working with the large, but we also want to target now the SME companies as well. So if there's a specific question around that, please get in touch and we can look at how we're going to work on that. On the second question, or the first question actually, on how we can trace what kind of metrics and credentials, as we call it, that we can add to the coffee. I think there we have a long list of details that we can attach to the coffee. And here we have to think about, okay, do we attach it through the farmer ID? So we also attach some kind of credibility to it, or the interaction with the farmer, or do we just upload it in the platform as an addition to any other information like volumes, prices, etc. So we can capture a lot of different complexities, a lot of information. We just have to think about what information are we just uploading, and what information would we want to have the farmer or the farmer group's interaction with. But to name a few, prices paid, we can do that. In terms of specific trainings, agricultural practices, soil, yeah, there are a few different things we can upload already now.
Thanks. There's a question here, I think probably for both of you. It may well be a little more coffee specific, but Vincent, maybe I start with you. A question about where the third-party logistics and particularly thinking about warehousing, I guess, fall into this, particularly when they're involved in a supply chain, which is obviously going to be dealing with a number of different traders and a number of different parties sitting either side of that sort of logistics operation. Yeah, interested to see how you both see it, both from a coffee perspective, but I guess, Vincent, also from a commodity perspective per se.
In terms of warehousing and the logistic around the warehouses, as I presented, Covantis is not addressing that part of the supply chain, because we are after the storage facility, because we are starting our journey on the platform from the FOB and ending at the cost and freight. So we are not covering also the logistic at destination, where we would discharge our cargo into a warehouse for further distribution inland. So yeah, so I'm a little bit let's say not embarrassed, but I cannot answer your question because that's not part of the scope of Covantis.
Okay, I think Diana, I guess from a principal point of view, though, the system should be able to sort of accommodate the fact that you're dealing with a range of people sitting either side of your operation.
Yeah. So since we have this ambitious scope, which we are managing from the producer to the market where the product is consumed, we do capture the warehouse facilities, because it's part of the trace to know what goes where. We do also acknowledge that sometimes the reality in terms of what coffees go where and how it's mixed, etc., is a complexity that we rely on our partners to supply us with information about and how it's working, because it's really, really different. I don't know if the question is also around if the warehouse per se has an integration and can upload information. I'd say that that's something that we are looking into, but right now we handle the warehouses as a point on the trays and a place where there could be happening things to the coffees as an aggregation or a disaggregation of the product. So that is being handled in the system.
That's great, thank you. A couple more questions. Hopefully we can sort of squeeze them in. I guess for both of you, what has been the single biggest challenge, or what do you foresee as being the single biggest challenge in getting buy-in from individual businesses? And I guess, Vincent, for you, perhaps looking beyond the 6 sort of original companies, and how do you get buy-in from the sort of the second and third columns that you put onto your presentation?
The biggest challenge is the market adoption, is because even though we are not including the warehouses, but we are covering an important number of participants in the supply chain. So all of these participants, as I said, being the shipper of goods at port of loading, the charterer transporting the goods from point A to point B. So all these participants, they do work together. And the purpose is to really have them on the platform. It is the market adoption. So that's the biggest challenge, is to make sure that those participants are joining the platform. And now, and how we try to convince them to join the platform is by the value proposition that we're bringing. At the end of the day, there is a value if there is a value for them to join, they will join, because they will realize that the efficiency that we are bringing, that we have developed together with them, and that's also how we are going to convince them, is by bringing them into the journey of developing the platform in terms of understanding their pain points, making sure that those pain points are addressed and either changed or diminished or even eliminated, so that when they go into the platform, they find an environment which provides them an efficient way to trade with other parties. So yes, the biggest challenge is the market adoption, and our answer is by bringing them into the journey, making sure that they get a value for what they are paying for, and also making sure that the way we are presenting the data is efficient and secure.
Yeah, so I couldn't agree more. For us also, it's not so much around not having interest from the coffee industry or from the many different companies or organizations, because the interest is huge, and we already have kind of, I mean, a basis of partners and clients joining, and we're expanding constantly. It's also around the market adoption, or I think the challenge comes also from how things are being done today and how they're being done in the future. So I think that is, there's not so much resistance in the perception, but more around, this is how we do it, how are we going to do it later? And those kind of things take time. So I think technically the evolution is going exponentially, it's super fast, but the users and their day-to-day life, I think that is a process that will take time, but it's also okay. I think you could start wherever you are today, and then we'll see going forward how that works. So I think the interest in there, people understand that things are going to be done differently in the future, but then getting those big companies or you know, other kind of organizations to move, it takes a little bit of time.
Thanks. We're almost out of time. I'm going to try and squeeze two very, hopefully, sort of brief answers to questions here. But for both of you, I guess, do you record the value of transactions within sort of blockchain? And then Vincent specifically, and I'm not quite sure of the focus of this question, but somebody's asking about the social impact of Covantis. Now, whether that's in terms of the impact back along the sort of the chain and maybe distribution of value, but I don't know whether you can comment sort of briefly on both of those, and then we'll come to Diana on the question of value recording.
So the question is about the social impact of the platform or the project.
Well, I'm taking it as the project.
Social impact. We can look at it from a pure user perspective, and yes, it will have an impact. It will allow a user to work more efficiently, to do potentially more within the same time, to do better for sure. So yes, it will have a social impact, if that's maybe an angle I would like maybe to prefer than I don't know what would be in the mind of the person asking the question. But yes, there is a social impact, because there is another way, as Diana is saying, there is a change management process that has to take place. People, they need to change slightly the way they work their work today, probably to do differently, to do better and more efficiently tomorrow. So yes, there is a social impact where people, they need to get used to work more closer with the other counterparty than today. So the way this platform are also working is also to bring people probably closer to each other, because they communicate more faster than yesterday, and more efficiently. So yes, there is a social impact in terms of how people will be working tomorrow, if that was the meaning of the question.
I hope so. I think it's a pretty sort of solid answer. Thank you very much. I'll just come to you quickly, Diana, on the question of value and whether that's sort of recorded within the blockchain operation.
So I guess the question relates to the transactions or the actual monetary movement. It's a little bit difficult to understand. So we are recording. So again, we can do a digital copy, a receipt of an actual financial transaction. So the payments, we have to adapt to the reality today where we couldn't do digital payments everywhere. We couldn't demand that from the users either. So right now we record it in terms of these digital receipts, but we do not execute it as of now, I think, on the blockchain as they're relating to, but it's definitely something going forward that that will be interesting in seeing the evolution of.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, time has beaten us. We must draw this to a close, but I'd like to again thank you both very much, not only for the presentations but for the sort of the question and answer session. And I think we've just about managed to squeeze every question in that sort of came through. I've got a couple left, but I may drop them over to you on. So thanks very much, and it will be interesting to see how this sort of process of digitalisation, I guess, across industry generally moves forward, and whether COVID has any impact on the sort of the speed of it as we move through 2021. So I hope everybody sort of found this useful and really taken some thoughts out of it, and in terms of your own business and how you sort of see yourselves going forward through digitalisation in the months and years ahead. Just a very quick note, looking forward to 2021, we are looking at further webinar topics, and at the moment we're looking at the next one being around the issue of sustainable supply and the role of genetics, which is an area that I'm certainly personally quite interested in with sort of my background. We hope that will take place early in the first quarter of 2021. So really, my final thanks again to Vincent and to Diana, to Seb, Kira and the FDF team for helping to sort of put this on, and to you all for joining. It probably falls to me to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, given that we're almost there, and for anybody in the UK, a peaceful and a settled transition into 2021. So thank you all indeed, and good afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye bye.